AI is advancing fast, with buzzwords like agentic, quantum, and synthetic data dominating conversations. And despite interest in generative AI and autonomous systems, few organizations have built the foundation to scale AI effectively and responsibly. Most dive in without a clear strategy, missing governance and cross-functional collaboration to drive real results. I'm Sterlina Smith, the global lead for the AI and Society team at SAS, part of the AI Ethics, Governance, and Social Impact Division. And today we'll talk about that foundation, and we'll share what we've learned along the way, as well as in our work with TM Forum, who is building an industry-specific AI blueprint for the telecommunications industry. Okay, we'll move on. I'll just... That's okay. Okay. I would say talk amongst yourselves, but you can't hear each other, so. It's okay. Okay, I'll have to do it that way, I guess.
It's not clicking on the laptop either?
No. You want me to go back? Okay, that works if I do that. Okay, that's okay. And we're back. We're in a moment of real paradox where AI is advancing faster than at any point in history. And I might have said those words last year, but they hold true today. Boardrooms are buzzing and budgets are moving. So by a show of hands, who in this room thinks they have the right foundation to actually scale AI effectively and responsibly? Anybody? All right, we got one. We've got a taker. So the gap between interest and execution has never been wider. Most companies dive in without a clear strategy. They run pilots that never scale. They invest in technology without aligning people and process. They lack governance. They lack the cross-functional collaboration to drive real results. A fast-evolving tech landscape, contrasting opinions, and the risk and cost associated make the how uncertain. AI use cases are evolving down different functional lines, potentially creating harmful data silos. In research done by TM Forum, we see that organizations are hungry to accelerate their journey towards becoming AI native, streamlining operations, generating value, and meeting customer needs and driving innovation. They found that 72% have issues with readiness, and only 13% have access to a trusted AI ecosystem or AI blueprint. That's why TM Forum, alongside partners like SAS, are building the AI native blueprint. So today we're going to talk about who TM Forum is. We'll talk about the AI native blueprint mission. We'll talk about how SAS is helping, some lessons we've learned along the way, and our call to action. We'll start with TM Forum. TM Forum is a global industry organization with over 800 member organizations across the connectivity ecosystem. This includes the top 10 communication service providers, the top 3 hyperscalers, leading network equipment providers, systems integrators, and SAS. And I'd like to draw your attention to the last block that's on this slide that says there are 110,000 and more active member professionals. And if you look at that last line, it says that 2,000 are professionals who participate in their projects like this blueprint. TM Forum members want to accelerate their journey towards becoming AI native, streamlining operations, generating value, meeting customer needs, and driving innovation. So TM Forum has embarked on creating an AI native blueprint, which will be the industry's first structured path to move from AI, from lab to trusted large-scale production. And they're doing that through the 4 work streams that are on this slide: agentic AI, governance, AI ops, and data. as a member organization, SAS had an opportunity to co-chair. And when we talked about our governance framework and how we've established that, and how we use that to guide AI governance within SAS, and how we advise our customers to do that, there was a natural fit with the goals that TM Forum has in developing this blueprint and how we've devised our framework. So we are contributing in 3 ways to this mission. The first is with our governance framework. The second is deep domain expertise in industry use cases. And the third is practical AI ops and observability capabilities that map to the blueprint's AI ops workstream. So the journey from discovery to framework incorporates these best practices. And this is at the heart of what we'll talk about today. And I'd like to invite my colleague, Manisha, to come up and join me.
Good afternoon, everyone. Hope you're having a good time, and are you all able to hear me well? Perfect. So I am Manisha Khanna. I lead up the global product marketing team for AI at SAS. I am a member of TM Forum, just like Sterlina, and I was a part of the AI Ops workstream. What we will share today is some lessons we have learned working with that entire industry forum on AI operationalization and AI governance. And we have got 5 lessons which we have learned over our past 1 year of work with the TM Forum members. First lesson is around moving beyond the lab. MLOps is not enough for large language models. And let me just double click on this a bit more. So, what we did was, in this work stream for AI ops, we identified that the approach you need to take for your large language models and deploying them to production has to be very different from your traditional machine learning operations. This is what I'll double click on, and I don't know, I would like to kind of understand how many of you understand the differences between machine learning models and large language models. I assume most of you understand that, right? Perfect. So the reason why the operationalization principles for these large language models need to be different now is because of these 4 reasons. And these are the 4 areas which were critical gaps the TM Forum members surfaced when it comes to operationalizing LLMs and why they are different from traditional machine learning models. Number 1 is knowledge, second is data, third is trust, and fourth is compliance. Let me double click a bit on each of them. When it comes to knowledge management, a lot of these large language models which you see in the market, ChatGPT, Gemini, Notebook LM, all of these are general purpose models. A lot of them are not grounded in your enterprise knowledge context, and they lack the domain expertise you need to apply them to your business use cases. At the same time, think about data. These large language models are trained on massive amounts of data, right? But then you have your data in your own enterprise context, and that data changes every time you work on operational systems. Every time you apply a large language model into your environment, you want to make sure that the real data and real-time data is fed into these models so that they can give you the closest accurate response which is contextual to the data you have in your environment. The third area is trust, and that includes misunderstanding, inaccuracy, irrelevant responses, and the quality of the outcomes which these large language models give. A lot of times, and I can guarantee you, every time you give a prompt, the same prompt to a model, every time it's going to give you a different answer, right? This is not just hallucination, it's more than that, right? But also, a lot of these language models struggle with hallucinations. And the impact of that is huge, and I'll come to that in terms of what's the level of impact. But a lot of these trust issues lead to issues in compliance. Because at the end of the day, in industries where you have high stakes, where decisions are impacting daily lives of people, they're impacting your own end customers, you need to be able to explain those decisions. And a lot of these large language models are literally black box. We hardly know what parameters they use, and we have no idea what they have been trained on. So what's the impact of this? These are not just technical limitations. These are implications on business requirements and your businesses. And the impact of this, I was researching and I found a few interesting statistics I thought I will share. There are industry reports which quote that the cost of hallucinations in terms of financial losses annually is estimated to be 250 million. That's huge. There's also regulatory fines which exist, and I think in legal cases, we are seeing a lot of that really emerging with regard to hallucinations leading the witness to drive certain outcomes. 75% of companies today are worried about hallucinations. At the same time, they're also worried that when you deploy these models into production, as is, their performance will degrade over time. So it's not just a problem of creating those large language models, fine-tuning them, and deploying them. There's a last mile problem, which is leading all the way up to deployment and monitoring in the future. We also know that there is, especially in countries which are regulated by European Union, there is around $35 million euro $35 million fine up to this particular value for any violations to the Act, and this is as per the 2024 landmark regulation in terms of EU AI Act. So obviously implications are a lot. So for those who are familiar with ML ops, this was a practice to bring machine learning models to production so that you can improve your reliability and scalability. Now that entire practice is transforming into a new discipline, and this is an emerging discipline right now, and the industry is claiming to call this as AI ops, which is all about moving your large language models and agents to production. How TM Forum defined AI ops is it's moving again from lab to experimentation to trusted production. And what it means is it's turning AI deployments from reactive firefighting into predictive, automated, reliable, and insight-driven operations. Now, how do you execute on this? So what we did with TM Forum was we brainstormed on an end-to-end process. And for those who are familiar with ML ops, you would imagine an end-to-end AI, data and AI lifecycle, where you develop models, you manage data, you develop models, and you deploy them into your decisions. For AI ops, there are a few specific areas I want to highlight as additions to your traditional ML ops processes. The first area is large language model knowledge management. Think about giving context to your large language models. This process is also called context engineering. This is where you are getting your data sources, which could be structured or unstructured in nature. You are also grounding that data to become more clean. You're labeling that data, but also you're creating embeddings and chunking and many other methods which are required to get your data sources to be able to feed into large language models. So that entire knowledge management discipline is obviously a discipline which is much needed right now for large language models in production deployments. There are two other operational pillars in this entire slide. The top one talks about prompt engineering, and the bottom one talks about RAG methods. When it comes to prompt engineering, it's a discipline where you can really help LLMs understand what you're trying to do with the large language model, and using prompt engineering methods, you can refine the prompts to a level that you can help large language model contextualize the end outcome of the responses you're getting from those prompts. RAG method is more about giving the capability to ensure that those models are retrieving knowledge from the knowledge you have engineered in the LLM knowledge management pillar, so that you have context given, and that context is applied to the outcomes of large language models. Now, it does not end here. Once you have deployed a model to production, think about this as a life cycle, where once you have deployed the model, you will notice here that there's also a process of making sure that there's continuous monitoring and fine-tuning of these models happening over a period of time. And at the same time, there's a critical step of AI ops decommissioning, which is added consciously to this entire lifecycle process, because these models consume resources. You do not want a model to just hang around and keep running. It's consuming infrastructure, it's consuming compute. So you do want to make sure once it's not in use, you're decommissioning that at the right time. And this is what TM Forum members are looking to adopt. So one of the TM Forum members has already deployed a customer service AI agent in their own environment. And by following this process, they did share with the TM Forum members that their mean time to resolution for those complaints has gone down from 10 hours to 5 hours by deploying these methods. So again, if you're deploying LLMs to production, I would highly encourage you to apply these best practices, which again, the TM Forum members have thought hard and got this to this stage where you can really apply them in best practices.
And the second lesson is that AI governance is a stakeholder-rich environment. So many times we're talking to our customers, and even in the work we're doing with TM Forum, we find that when we start to talk about governance, people go down the route of technology and the systems and thinking that those are the people that need to be involved, and sometimes the only people that need to be involved. But that's not the case. This is not an exhaustive list, and it will look different in every organization. But on here, you'll see some of the usual suspects that you would expect to see. But there are a lot of other people on here that, in different roles, that you may not think about when you think about AI governance. And with all those different people, they all have different viewpoints and a different stake in AI governance across the organization. And together, those people in your organization, those stakeholders, help create the culture of your organization. And AI governance operates within a culture guided by values and principles. So what do we mean by that? Values indicate what the stakeholders care about and want to protect and promote. And think about what those look like in your organization. And when we have those values, the next step of that are principles. Those are the norms and guardrails that describe what is ethically and legally required to protect and promote those values. At SAS, we have 6 principles. Human centricity is the first of those, always remembering that there's a person at the end of every decision we make. Additionally, we have inclusivity, transparency, accountability, robustness, and privacy and security. And those are not novel words, we all know what those mean, but it's really based on the values of our organization, what those mean to us to have those principles and how we want to protect them. Then we get into governance. Here's where we're assessing if the principles are satisfied in a specific case. Maybe this is something that is looking at technology, or maybe it's business process. But if you'll follow the chain, we go from values to principles to governance to ethics. Now, ethics are not laws, right? They're what we should do. And that is reflected in the labor performed to uphold those values, to adhere to those principles, and to support governance. And so many times we hear that, oh, well, governance slows us down, right? That it's going to be a bottleneck. It's going to keep us from innovating and doing what we need to do. When really, governance isn't a constraint. It's actually an accelerator.
Janus phase technology, this is a fun one. And I was chatting with my sister yesterday, and the fun fact is we have 20 years of age gap, and she's contemplating getting married. So what I was explaining to her is when you're a girlfriend, you have very different parameters for deciding who to date, right? Somebody you like chatting with, just like we have ChatGPT, we love chatting with it. We love to date ChatGPT, right? But when you're getting married, your parameters change. Now you want somebody who gels with your family, who can take responsibilities as you grow the family bigger. So your evaluation parameters are very different, and the same applies to large language models. So when you deploy your language models to production, your evaluation framework has to exist where you can prove that that LLM will be there for you for long term, just like getting married. When I talk about Janus phase technology, large language models are truly Janus phase. They give us great efficiencies, very great productivity. I mean, I'm personally fascinated by these large language models, but at the same time, they introduce new risks. And those risks could be things like black box risk, and I did touch upon these in my previous section as well. There is a lot of domain gap in these models. There are compliance challenges, and there is trust barrier. And these are new risks which are really emerging, and they exist when you deploy large language models. So what we did with TM Forum was to make sure we are able to address some of these risks is to overcome these barriers. TM Forum members introduce a new framework for being able to evaluate these LLMs to make sure before they deploy them into production, they trust these particular LLMs so that they can be married with them for long term. So if you move on, this is a framework which is proposed by TM Forum members where we are defining a way to automate some of these matrices which are very critical to build trust in those large language models. And you can see which risks they mitigate, but there are matrices proposed to be monitored for transparency, which include your traditional matrices like accuracy and recall, but also generative matrices like Bailu and Rogue. The second pillar here in the framework is matrices which help you address and measure the domain gap which these large language models have. And these include things like measuring fault reasoning, being able to determine causal reasoning, being able to assess the level of domain knowledge, and there are enough frameworks existing in the market which help you do that. At the same time, a very important criteria here in our discussion which came up was, even if we have these matrices in place, a lot of times we realize these testing and evaluation methods will not be sufficient for us. because a lot of that domain context is in the brain and the minds of human beings who are using these systems, because you know the business the best, right? So a critical step which was proposed by the TM Forum members here was to make sure we are introducing human specialist scoring to make sure the knowledge and the context these LLMs are accessing and using and consuming is grounded and they're giving the right outcome. So again, your evaluation matrices which are automated, supplemented by human review. This is something which TM Forum is recommending to their industry. Third are the matrices around governance, which include things like privacy compliance, leakage detection, PII detection, and all of these, the goal of these matrices is to make sure you're basically having this assurance to confidence principle, because the thought process here is the better assurance you have, the higher the confidence will be in these systems when you deploy them to production.
And our fourth lesson is that trust is bigger than the sum of its parts. This is something that the EVP at TM Forum that we work with loves to say, and when I first heard it, I struggled with it. I thought, how can I have pieces of something that come together that are more than the thing itself? But really, have we heard that phrase, better together, right? And so that's what we're talking about, is not the value of things individually, but the value of things collectively. And what we're talking about here is, you can look at some of these examples on here about rising pressures and lack of unified governance and different things. But what we're getting at is that AI without trust is a risk. But in this top corner, in this smaller print, you'll see that AI with trust is a strategy. So if we start looking at this diagram, we see CEO confidence, and think of a C-level person. For that person to have the assurance that AI is going to behave, to function, and to deliver the outcomes as expected, we have to look at the people, the process, and the technology on that lower line. These are the core components of any AI investment that need to be continuously monitored. Individually, the people, the process, and the technology are all important, but together, they're better. So with that, that's where we have this continuous trust in the middle, is looking at that aggregation of confidence from all those components to really form a state of continuous trust through AI governance, which gets us to that AI with trust is a strategy, and that trust is bigger than the sum of its parts. So how does SaaS come into this? And we talked about that framework and how we govern AI internally and what that looks like. So what are we bringing to the table in this relationship with TM Forum? Well, what you see here is our AI governance map. And this is how we govern AI internally at SaaS, and again, how we encourage our customers to as well. We start with culture, which is the foundation for our AI governance. And we like to say that change moves at the speed of culture. If the culture of your organization is not willing to embrace something or make a change or move, it's not going to happen. This is also where we talk about AI fluency and just having that as cultural fluency. Next, we get into the operations. And the operations is really that technology layer. This is where at SaaS, we bake ethicalness into our products from the design. We say ethical by design into that, so we can build trustworthy products for you all to use, so that we say you all can be responsible innovators by using SaaS technology. Then when we get into compliance, this is where we're really looking at the regulations, we're looking at the risk management frameworks, those different components. And then we get to oversight. And oversight, remember that stakeholder slide that we had where we had all those different people? What we're looking at here is an interdisciplinary committee from across the organization that is there to weigh in on things that may be ethical questions. Maybe that's a procurement decision or something that is a higher risk potentially within the organization. Sometimes we can get so wrapped up into our own work and the way we think that it takes that perspective from other people within the organization to kind of raise their hand and say, are you sure about that? So that's why oversight is so important as well. So again, we have culture, operations, compliance, and oversight, these 4 areas. And we've created a maturity assessment which everyone has the opportunity to take. With this, what you'll see is that the 4 areas will populate on the left. And then on the top, what you're looking at is foundational, responsive, proactive, and leader. So this maturity assessment is 10 questions. And each of these 10 questions has 5 answer choices, A through E. And when you answer those questions, you'll get a score, and that score will tell you where your organization falls within each of those areas. And it may be that in culture, you're responsive. Maybe in operations, you're foundational. Perhaps in compliance, you're a leader. And oversight could be proactive. So you don't necessarily have to be in the same categories for foundational, responsive, proactive, and leader across all of them. And every organization's desire is not to necessarily be a leader in all areas. Maybe in yours, you're okay, and you're saying, you know what, in this, we're great being responsive, and in another one, we want to be proactive. So every organization is different. It's definitely not one size fits all, but the idea of the assessment is to give you a level set of where you fall right now based on the practices in your organization and how you answer these 10 questions, and then to provide you with concrete next steps if you desire to move to a different level. So how does this play with TM-Forum? How are they using this? So that's where we have the landscape of AI trust levels. And if you start at the top, you'll see we have responsible, trustworthy AI. So you ask your CEO, you ask your C-level person, are you effective in your AI assurance? And he says, well, or she says, can I trust my AI agents? Well, how do I know? Well, let me look at my AI governance categories and say, do we have what it takes? Do we have the right structure of objectives? And then we move to this next one, which is telco specific. So we're saying, for our communication service provider operating environments that are running agents, do they have the control capabilities? So it's kind of these downstream questions. Then we move to the bottom right, and those groups that you see in the darker color, those are the main operational areas within a communication service provider, and you'll see some of the areas where agents are. So what we did was we actually took that SAS survey that we have, that maturity assessment, we turned that into a survey, and we sent that out to TM4 members. And we said, not only do we want you to answer these questions 1 through 10 and say, are you A, B, C, D, or E on there, but we also want you to provide free-form text. We want you to say why you answered that way. What does that look like in your organization? What would you expect if you answered a certain way? And that's where you see the word evidence. So those free-form responses actually contributed to creating evidence so that we can then go back with a little bit of SAS magic, figure out what that would actually look like to go to a CEO and say, if you had this evidence, would you be assured, would you be confident in your use of AI? And all of that will wind up feeding this example that you see on the side, which will have multiple levels and give them concrete assurance levels that they can have. So it'll be like industry benchmarks for them. So it's not the SAS maturity assessment that TM-Forum will ultimately use, but it is based on that to create AI trust levels for themselves.
All right, our last lesson, improving AI visibility is a starting point for responsible innovation, and let me show you why. So in the past, like just a couple of years ago, you used to have a different variety of predictive models in place. But now, look at the chaos we have. We have got large language models, you've got AI agents, you've got various use cases you're trying to achieve with these new AI technologies. Some of them are through open source. Some of them are still questionable in terms of security they provide. But at the same time, you have these emerging list of policies and frameworks, best practices which are emerging all across the globe, right? If you do not have governance, this is the situation you are in. You have complete chaos all over the place. But what you want is, you want your agents, models, use cases to align with standards, internal policies, and ultimately regulations. So this is what the end state and the desirable state you want to be. From a SaaS perspective, we are doing a lot of groundwork with our AI governance offerings in this area to make sure we can get you out from that chaos to this clear and controlled state. And I do want to share SaaS portfolio of offerings with regard to what we're doing in the market right now, right? So a lot of the things which we spoke about when I spoke about AI ops best practices, that sit within the bottom layer here, because the whole idea is that governance should be built in and not bolted on afterwards. So govern your data and build trustworthy AI. This is where a lot of the capabilities I spoke about, they are available today in SaaS Via, which gives you a strong foundation to start any AI implementation to make sure it helps you scale, and it's basically a strong marriage to go after. The second layer is around strengthening AI governance, and this is where, when it comes to highly regulated industries, you want to make sure that you have got enterprise-grade compliance with integrated governance, policy management, especially looking at banking sector where model risk management has been very prevalent. Think about best practices which that industry has been doing for a number of years when it came to machine learning models. They had to make sure that for high-risk use cases, you were validating every model that is getting deployed to production, and you're able to explain those to regulators. A lot of that can be now applied across industries, and you have this in the form of SaaS AI Governance Manager offering, which is looking at those industries which are highly regulated, where the whole goal is to make sure you're setting those best risk management principles in place. Now, we do understand that a lot of organizations might not have a separate risk management team, might not have those policies and standards in place. But then, AI governance starts with having visibility on your entire AI landscape. That includes your use cases, that includes your models, as well as includes your agents. And once you have that visibility, you can deliver on right level of controls and right level of assessments so that you can have just enough governance to get you started. And this is what the top pillar does with our SaaS AI Navigator offering, which is upcoming, and there are a lot of demos here. There's also a AI Navigator booth where you can go and visit and see an actual live demo of the system. But the whole idea here with AI Navigator is that we really want you to gain full visibility and control on your AI landscape and centralize your use cases, models, and agents, embed assessments, and enable governance while accelerating responsible adoption.
So we will have a few minutes for questions if anyone has them. But before we do that, I want to draw your attention to this. Tomorrow morning, if you'd like to get up bright and early at 8:30, you can join us on the 3rd floor. So upstairs in, where are we? In Dallas 1-2 for a roundtable. So it'll be Manisha and myself, as well as Mary, our colleague, as well. And this will be an opportunity for us, instead of us talking at you, we'll all be able to talk together and share, and that's a real opportunity to learn, not just from us, but from each other as well. So again, invite you all to come at 8:30. Hope to see everyone there at our roundtable. And with that, does anyone have any questions? If so, I think they have a mic so that we can actually hear you.
I have one. Oh, sorry. Can you hear me? Sorry. I was just going to ask, so after the maturity assessment with TM Forum is conducted, from there, if there are any gaps, or what is some action that you've seen taken based on the results from that?
Okay, well that's great. So the first time we actually ran the survey, we had really great response. But what we found is that some people chose not to fill out the free-form text response for everything, right? So they would choose A, B, C, D, E, and then maybe we would get some answers. So we said, well, if we sent this out again, how could we get better answers? What could we do? So we worked with, again, remember I talked about the fact that there are lots of people, over 2,000 professionals that participate in the various projects. So the people that have chosen to be part of this work stream and work on this project, we have a weekly recurring call. They join when they can. And we went through and we said, all right, based on all your different perspectives from member input, because it's a member-driven organization, what would be changes to these questions we could make to make them more relevant, more compelling? What do we need to do differently? So we went through and we modified that survey and are resending that out, and we're going to see what type of results we get from that. What will that look like? How will that be different? And then the idea is to, again, take that, aggregate that information, clean it up, get some insights from that, and then really use that to drive the framework that TM Forum will use. And this is not a quick process. We started this in November, multiple iterations to kind of decide what to do and the best way to do that. And we will talk about this. They have a big event in June that will talk about this, and then it really won't wrap up until the beginning of 2027. So this is a commitment.
I have a follow-up question to that. Yeah, how do you think those survey insights might inform action moving forward? You know, if someone was looking to improve their AI governance, what would be some action you'd recommend?
But it's really good. So from SaaS, people say, you know, what does SaaS get out of it? So what we're doing is we like to benchmark different industries. So for example, we've had enough people in financial services to take the AI maturity assessment that we can then say, when people in financial services get their results, this is where you stand as an organization, but this is how you compare to your peers who have also taken this. So we hope as a company to be able to have that benchmark for the telco industry. So that's one aspect of that. And then again, for the people that take the survey, they will get individual results. But the survey and the framework is the foundation for what TM Forum is building. But of course, again, there is this QR code that you see right here. If anyone is curious about this particular assessment, you're welcome to do it. It should take you about 10 minutes. There's no free form on there. But if you do it, just to let you know, what'll happen is you will get like a score for each of those 4 levels we talked about. And then there is a second level of that with more information. So just feel free to scan that QR code and take the AI maturity assessment. Is anyone here in financial services? Oh, then you will get a benchmark of where you stand against your peers. Anybody else? All right, well, if not, thank you all for choosing our session today. We know there were a lot of sessions to choose from, and we're glad you came here, and we hope to see you all tomorrow morning at 8:30 on the 3rd floor.